This is a Coast virtual event from September 21st, 1921. Everyone's being very quiet. Well, as I said, I didn't really try to put together anything formal today as an agenda. I'm hoping to do that for 2 weeks from now and pull something back together again. So I just throw it open for anyone who wants to make any comments. The only comment from my perspective, I think everyone's aware, we are shooting for October 16th to go to the Golden State Railroad Museum. It's actually interesting. That's going to be a fairly controlled environment. We'll be on the train, and I don't know if anyone saw the TSA just extended their mask requirement for public transportation through January 1st. So there'll be masks on the train, and then of course the museum, I'm sure, still has masks. So I don't think it's going to really be very, very concerning, but we're going to shoot for October 16th at this point and hope that we are able to go at that point.
That's a good goal. That should be a good trip.
Oh, yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. Well, actually, the Pleasanton Club, the ACCRS, actually did it. There are only 4 members were able to go. We did it back in July, or actually June, I think. And it was a lot of fun. Went from Martinez, went up, spent the day. We actually stayed and had dinner there at one of the places down in Old Sacramento, and then came home on that train that leaves just before 7. But yeah, it's a really fun day, and the exhibit is actually incredibly impressive. Unfortunately, I asked Frank, he's to come to talk about the layout he built. He's not going to be able to join us, but I think we're going to still have Getz is going to come and do a talk for us. So that'll be really cool to talk about, how the exhibit got put together, and kind of maybe a lot about where some of the exhibit items came from. So should be fun.
How about Mike Blumenstadt? Can you get Mike Blumenstadt to come?
I don't know. That might be an interesting question. I haven't asked Frank, so that might.
I'll talk to Mike, but I doubt he will. He had he had a bypass surgery last year, and he's been really careful, and he needs to be. I will talk to him. I got to talk to him anyway. And for me, there's a chance I could go from my Modesto house and meet everybody there, but I can't go from Belmont.
How about Charlie Getz?
Charlie will be there. So Charlie's going to come. Charlie's going to come and do a tour. What we're going to do is we're going to take the train up, or if somebody wants to drive, that's fine. We're going to plan on meeting at noon at the NMRA exhibit, and Charlie's going to do a tour for us at that point. And then kind of everybody's kind of on their own, or however they want to organize. I mean, we'll kind of see and talk about it on the way up. The one thing as we get a little closer was thinking about was maybe asking if everyone who's going kind of gives an indication. We actually have a board going on the PCR groups.io site. One thing might be to get everybody's cell numbers, so we can have a mechanism to be able to send out texts and say what car people are in if we want to try to find a car together going up. Because as people get on at different places, that way they can you don't have to try to walk through the whole train trying to find people. So should be fun. So someone had to do some modeling over the last couple of weeks since we've talked the last time. So I was hoping. Ken always comes through.
Phil, look, like I've been trying for the last hour to get the model set up so that I can share the screen with the pictures I took of it, and it's something that's there that it won't allow me to browse the files. When I go to share screen, it wants to let me, if I click on files, it wants me to let these files in the cloud. Well, I don't put shit in the cloud.
I don't know.
It's I just cannot browse the files that I created, and I've got them sitting. Specifically, I created it, even published it as a PDF so that it would be nice and compatible. Up Zoom.
Well, Zoom doesn't want to open it?
It doesn't even want to let me browse to the file. When I click on share screen,
Yeah.
okay. I guess I have to, okay. Do I have to get out of full screen?
No, you shouldn't have to, but you can. It's probably better.
Okay. So I go and click on
Click on share
share
screen,
files,
files.
and it wants to know on my iPad. Well, I don't have a frickin' iPad. And it's
So what?
showing me,
So you're just on a computer, right? So
huh?
just open the PDF. Just open the PDF up on your computer.
Okay. I gotta find it. I suck.
Or is it a PowerPoint that you did it with, or how did you do it?
I did it in ODI, which is the Open Office version of PowerPoint.
So you can just open that file also. You open either one of those.
Okay. I'm having a Windows connection fit. All right, here I've got the PDF I'm going to open. All right.
Okay, now go back to Zoom.
Okay. Well, I'm not getting to Zoom. Oh, there I am. Okay. Now,
Now
share.
share screen.
Oh, there it is. Now it has to be open already.
Right. There you go.
Okay. Well, for the last 2 weeks, I've been struggling with building a replica of an SP scale test car and the scale repair car. Um, and let's see here. This is the prototype. It was apparently modified in 1950, built from an old B50 somewhere in the 10 series, um, a wood-sided boxcar, and they rebuilt it into this new scale repair car. Now, this is showing it in the post-1956 color scheme, where they'd gone and painted things in a maintenance of way gray. But my time period, it was back in 1950, and it was in uh, boxcar red for so this is the car, and let's see if I can get this down here so you can see it. There we go. Let's just go over here. All right. Basically, this is just taking I took a lead from Jason Hill. He is after I initially put on the Facebook SP group, I'd put out the fact that Bachmann was putting out a scale test car. He went ahead and used another old Walther scale test car and took an AccuRail boxcar. This is all an HO for those of you who are in other scales. And he did a pretty good job of doing the conversion. But my problem with his thing is that the car was rebuilt in 1950. And the AccuRail boxcar has very deep, highly grooved, weathered siding. And I needed to try and uh, eliminate that effect of the heavy groove siding. So I spent almost a week scraping and trying to fill and so forth to eliminate the heavy siding effect. Um, Also, I used a lot of different parts than Jason. For instance, I used Tichy work car windows, um, some Tichy. No, it wasn't Tichy. I don't know who it was. Ladders, separate ladders. Um, PSC brass casting for the um, uh, stove vent, which is this vent here, and had to scratch build the toilet vent, which is has a cone top. I think I'm going to redo that one because it should be a little thinner. And anyway, I've been working on this all week, for 2 weeks actually. Um, and the next, come on, let's see, how do I go to the next slide here?
Actually, the next little thing, just to the right of the picture, that little thing you grab, yeah. To the right of the picture, the little bar just to the right of the picture, that one. Yeah, that one, grab it and slide it up and down. There you
Okay.
go.
Well, this is the scale test car. Unfortunately, this, okay, my friend Eric Berg made decals for me. Unfortunately, he got the scale wrong on the scale test car. And it should be a lot smaller um, in um, in font size. It's about almost 40% too big. So part of the other problem was that the Bachmann had cast on. This is a metal casting, the handrails, and so you had to squeeze the lettering underneath their cast on handrails, which is not how the uh, prototype went. It looked like this. So anyway, I've got to go back with Eric and see if we can get a new decal made and printed. He also printed decals for the I go back up to the top. It seems I apologize. I haven't practiced navigation because I had such a hard time getting into the things. Um, he also made the decals for the scale repair car lettering, which there we go. Now we see it, which I've used here, with the exception of a microscale SP to get the correct size. So anyway, that's what I've been totally engrossed with the past couple of weeks.
So it almost looks like there's a sway back in that. Is that in the car or is that in the picture?
That's in the picture.
Ah, okay.
It's not in the car itself. The car had been, as I say, had been rebuilt in 1950 from where they eliminated some of the side supports, the and so it was quite a rebuild. The car to the left is actually a very similar car. You can see the angled side supports. Well, what I had to do was cut those off and smooth out the siding and so forth. Anyway, it doesn't look as good in this picture as it should. But anyway, you were asking what we've been doing for the last 2 weeks.
That was great. That was absolutely, you got to give big thumbs up there. So
Okay.
Well,
excellent.
hi all. I'm Bob Rosenbauer.
Hey, Bob.
I've been lurking here for a while. I thought I might show what I've been up to for the past couple of years in the beginning stages of a HO layout, if I can figure out how to do this. So you say I need to share my screen?
So what are you going to show us? Is it what
I'm
kind of
going
an
to show you
application?
I'm going to show you some JPEGs of my layout room.
So the best way to do it is just go ahead and click on share at the bottom on Zoom where it's green, it says share.
Right.
And then the upper left will be your screen on your computer. You'll actually probably see Zoom on that screen. The one that's, if you've got two screens, it'll say screen one, screen two.
Let's
But-
see, I see I'm on a Mac. So a box came up and then there's some potential windows here. So
Right,
desktop
those are
is
all
on.
those are all the videos your applications are generating, but the upper left one should be your screen.
Okay, right.
So just click on that and share it, or just double click on it, and that'll share your screen. So we'll see your screen, and now whatever you're showing, so we're seeing your email. So go ahead and click on your.
Okay.
There you go. Click on that, and now.
Okay, I've got a bunch of stuff I could show here, but maybe I'll just show the
Cool.
the layout here itself, maybe. So what?
Just click on the first one, and it'll open it. Click on one and open it. Just double click on it. No, just one. Just click on one picture.
Well, I can.
There you go. And
That's
now
okay,
you should
right?
be able to go forward and back, and that you should be able to throw it somewhere
Right.
into full screen mode.
Okay, so for the past few
Why
years,
don't you throw it into full screen mode so that it's full screen?
okay, how's that?
That's perfect. Now we're seeing exactly the picture. Yes, great.
Okay, so this is part of the layout room, the beginning stages of my. It's the I'm modeling the New River and Allegheny district of the C&O circa 1950. From about deep water, which is just before Gawley, through Hinton and on up to Allegheny. So it will begin with a yard on this side going along this wall, and then out onto the main line through here, and this will be following the New River. Up through here is the turnoff for Gawley, which is heads up onto a branch to the town of Cass, which kind of winds its way around up here and will be on the far side of this peninsula coming out. It will continue down along this wall to the far end of the room, and then the main line swings around and also continues down to the far end of the room, kind of in the front at a lower level through the town of Hinton, loops around the back end of this wall, and then follows along the right side of the coming back on the right side of the room up to the town of Allegheny here. And then on this side, off screen, will be some staging to connect to Tidewater. And on this side, we'll have some staging connecting to, this side connecting to Tidewater and the other side connecting to Deepwater. So this shows some of the track work, some of the spline roadbed from the other side of the room, and then I really like doing track work. So this is represents some fast tracks, turnouts and crossovers. Spent some time having to learn to do that. The roadbed, I wanted to use homobed because I'm spiking into this, and I ordered some of this just as Cascade was going out of business. So I ended up having to mill all this stuff myself out of 4x8 sheets of the stuff. And that was a real project to get it to the right thickness, 5 mil for the main line, 3.5 for the branch line. And getting the 60-degree angle cut on it, bevel was quite a project.
Oh, that's right. You have the program this morning.
So this just shows how I put together some of the spline. You can never have enough clamps. I did run some just flex track on it to begin with to get to run some locos and to test my grades. This was my first attempt at making a little panel. Again, just a little further along on getting the roadbed in place. This is where that yard area will be. I had a good friend who is a bit of an artist, and she did the backdrop for me. Tried to get a sense of what it was like to be down in the valley, you know, kind of looking up at the mountains. This is a section I've been working on for the past couple of months, getting all these turnouts in, and essentially these crossovers coming out. This is, again, it would be the main line along the New River, and then there's more staging coming in from a couple of return loops in this direction here. Another view of that. Again, I'm enamored with all these turnouts, and this is kind of how I've settled on laying down my track. I initially hand laid all of this, but since I have the hand track jigs, fast track jigs, I kind of pre-bend some rail, and then I go to my straight track jig, solder in one side of these ties, and then I lay it in place and just solder in the other side. So I think this will make for a pretty robust bit of track work. A lot of this is going to be hidden, so I really need it to be good. That's a little bit more of a close-up view. I think that's probably it. And then maybe just one other thing I would show here would be some of the structures I've been working on as well. You know, you try and divide your time between all these different aspects of the hobby. So, you know, I'm pretty much a novice at all of this. I'm kind of learning as I'm going. So I've tried to build some stuff. These ones in the foreground are mine. This one I got from a friend of mine who was getting out of the hobby. But this is just a Campbell structure. This is another Campbell. This is a Sierra West, where I was trying to get some practice to actually using chalks and getting that surface to look a little better. These are my very first structures, trying to get the roofs to look like they're really old and rusty, that these buildings have been around for a while. This one was in progress. That one's kind of near finished. Close up of that guy. Oh yeah, and then a tower. I'm trying to put lights on everything, at least exterior lights. These little LEDs, they're kind of neat. And then my wife actually wanted me to get this little lumber yard, which was kind of fun to put together. There's a neat 3D printed saw in this one that was really, really nice. And then the wood itself. So I've got a bunch of others I could show of the room in progress and kind of more stuff earlier on, but I can just leave it there and let other folks.
Well,
Contribute.
perhaps it'd be good, Bob, to think about kind of scheduling more of a kind of a layout tour for it. Where are you located? Just out of curiosity.
I'm in Montera, just north of Half Moon Bay.
Oh, okay, cool. That's great. When we do a peninsula, at some point we do a peninsula meeting, and at some point in the future when we're all together again, we'll may try to get you scheduled to have a layout tour of where you're at. It looks like it'd be a lot of really cool structures and things to go on the layout already.
Yeah, there are a few. You never. I'm retired now, but you still never have enough time to get as much done as you would like. Progress is slow. I'm just a one-man operation here.
That's true. Well, see if there's some folks around who'd like to join in, start a round robin there in the area. Maybe
Well, there is a guy. I don't know if you guys know him, Pete Cressman. He lives here in Montera as well.
Cool. Well, that's good.
Yeah,
But we should,
Bob, good to see the progress. I don't know if you remember me. I stopped by to see you a couple of years ago.
Oh, absolutely, David.
Yeah,
Yes.
good to see your progress.
Yeah, I'm pecking away at it, and I'm sure looking forward to when you open up again for some ops.
Yeah, I've been kind of working on train automation such that we can run the ops with a light crew, say, using only the yard crews, or another option would be yard crews and locals, but all the mainline trains in either railroad or both of them at the same time running on the same schedule they would have if it had people. I'm interested in doing that, well, partly because of this COVID thing, but it's always been kind of fascinating to me that a club or a museum, people want to see all the trains running, even if the members haven't all showed up. Public days. So clubs and museums generally has some requirement put on by their landlord, whoever gives them the space, that they have to have running during the week. But it's pretty hard to do if you don't know who's going to show up at any given time. And so one of my interests is in I guess it's sort of a blend of simulation and automation, so that everything looks like it's running, even if it's not. And then the other part of that is so that walk-ins can participate in something which they don't really understand what's going on, which means intercepting their messages and deciding in the background whether or not you're going to let them do what they're trying to do, or if they try to run a little train back and forth, and whether or not you're going to allow them to run it out on the main line or not. But since the person who's monitoring that may not be there that day, it has to be decided by some type of automation control. Anyway, that's what I'm working on, and we're quite far along on that, and I expect to be able to have at least some limited op sessions shortly, probably, in which we'll operate yards without but with crews of 6 or 7 people rather than 25.
Sounds like AI to me.
It has some aspects of it, but this is really primitive in proportion to AI. Actually, one of the people I'm working with is an AI specialist, but he's looking at video control of the video in the background, so that somebody even remotely could direct this thing and see what was going on with the cameras following where the action was. A fellow named Tom Chalaby in Texas, he actually has a little company you can buy his products called Choo Choo Vision, but his background is AI. But he's working only with the video part of it. anyway, glad to see you're moving along there, Bob.
Well, thank you, and good to see you again.
The long pregnant pause. I haven't done a lot. We've been doing some things at the club in Pleasanton. We're going to be open next weekend for the Good Guys show. So, but mainly it's been trying to just get everything to some semblance of rework after a year and a half of sitting in a building alone with just the mice and squirrels running on top of the layout.
Yeah, the Golden State Model Railroad Museum, we've been running on Sundays since July 11th. We get about 100 people on Sundays. Our landlord, the East Bay Regional Parks District, has allowed us to drop our Wednesday public openings for the time being. So we're just doing Sundays. People are allowed to come by on Saturdays, but we don't guarantee we run trains on that day. But been pretty good crowds coming in, watching our trains going around. So,
Larry, what museum was that? I didn't hear it.
The Golden State Model Railroad Museum over in Point Richmond.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I should have recognized the picture there.
Phil, that all the clinics finally come down from the convention. On August 7th, I did a marathon run going through them before they.
I left them up. I actually left them up for another week or so, just because I kind of wanted to give folks a chance, and nobody really complained. But I finally took them down because there was the original plan was only 2 weeks, and we had a long discussion about sending it to 4 weeks. It turns out, as far as I can tell, there was never any clinician contracts generated. So it's kind of a little bit of that the clinicians own their content. And I know some of the clinicians, I mean, we had a discussion about where to put it, and I have not heard. And, Seth may be in a better position to talk about, there was a discussion at one point about taking the clinics and putting them up on the NMRA member site where you could get to them there. I haven't had a further discussion about that. Seth, I don't know if you have heard anyone have a discussion on that.
Let's see. Okay, I am unmuted. Yeah, the NMRA never really came back to us on that, but what we wanted to do is offer the clinicians who wanted to leave them up an opportunity, and John Abeticola is arranging to do that. So I think John and the various clinicians will reach out, and if you want it to be up and available, John will just put it on his channel. Now, it'll have a little branding around it. It may be monetized, but it'll generally be there. So, and I know a couple of people and John have had that discussion.
Yeah. So just John did all the mixing of all of the stuff for the convention and did a lot of work there. And he has the videos. Because it's a lot of work, we decided not to break them down for the convention into the single 1 hour blocks or just the clinic block. So there, the full 3 hour recording was what we put up. I think what John wants to do is, if any clinician would like, all they need to do is tell John, hey, John, can you put my clinic up? What John will do is mix that clinic as a separate thing with attribution to the convention, but he'll put it on his site, and it'll be actually there so you can watch it there as an individual clinic. And I think he's probably thinking about maybe having other clinics as well on his site. So, I'm kind of comfortable with that. He gets a little bit of monetization out of it, which to me is not a big deal one way or the other. He and Sydney did an incredible amount of volunteering for the convention, and that puts the material out where people can see it. So, you know, the other thing is if there's anyone who has a clinic they'd like to do here that says, hey, this is a clinic we should watch as a divisional thing, let me know, because I have the clinic videos. So I can contact the clinician. If they're comfortable, we can just play their clinic here on a Saturday. So kind of leave that open. I mean, I'm not going to do it unless a clinician says they're okay with it, but I'm assuming most folks would be okay with that. So yeah, I think at this point, getting them out into the community makes the most sense, just because, you know, there's not going to be a real way to have, you know, convention clinics from the NMRA in a specific location on the NMRA website, because I don't think they've really reconciled that this is something that happens again, and I think they don't see it as being theirs like NMRX. I think from the NMRA HQ perspective, the NMRX team is really the only content team they're going to focus on. So somebody else had to have done some good modeling here. There's, you know, can't, of course, I feel so guilty because I really haven't. So
I know eventually one of these days I'm going to be building a yard module. It'll be my very first thing to have done on a layout in years. And so for the past several weeks, I've been pulling up videos all over the place on YouTube, just trying to learn how to do roadbed, how to install switches. You know, are tortoises any better than this new digital IP switch from Cobalt? All sorts of things like that. I'm just trying to get up to speed before I even start whacking my first nail into the wood.
well, you know, the other thing to do is use these servo motors and 3D print a base for them. We actually, you know, had some Jonathan actually Sauer, I think, showed us his designs. He was doing some stuff with that. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, there's a lot more options now than there were 5 years ago. So
I'm trying to avoid making mistakes and putting this thing together, trying to get it right the first time. So trying to learn as much as I can first.
absolutely. I think as you begin to think about it, you know, these kind of things like this are a great place to get some feedback. Because I know I did some designs with the one of the LD SIG kind of, you know, meet an expert session, and really helped me in terms of thinking about some of the layout, the structures, and what you were trying to do and what it would mean in operations. So both from a design and a kind of thought process on build, it's a great place to have those conversations. So
I have questions. I definitely. Go ahead, Sam.
I have a line of switch motors also, Larry. You might want to take a look at those.
Oh, okay.
I'll put a link up in the chat.
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was amazing. And if you get a chance to watch it, for those of you that are kind of into electronics, and one of the guys, Ted Becker, did a presentation on, there's a thing called New Tracks that's on, I think this was on Wednesday night. And he did a presentation on Arduinos. And the beginning of the presentation was kind of what he was doing with Arduinos in terms of running things on his layout. The second half was he basically decided that he needed to have his Arduinos talk to each other. And he looked at the options, decided they really weren't very good. So he designed his own digital transmission bus, including building the cards and stuff, and then designed his own publish and subscribe protocol to run over it. And so he kind of built, I mean, kind of from scratch built his own version of LCC, which I thought was pretty amazing. So not something I don't think anyone would want to implement, but it was kind of amazing to see someone do that on their own.
You know, Phil, about 20% of the people who do signaling systems just want to design one, and you could give them seriously, you could give them a product, say to them, write me a spec for what you want. And if you could actually get them to take the time to do that, you could show them the product they want pretty much at cost. And they would say, no, I want to design it myself. And amazing stuff out there that people have done. Some of it shows up on my site if they feel like they want to share it. But an awful lot of them are, oh, no, I don't want to be bothered documenting it. That's work. And, you know, it's just in their heads. So, you know, unfortunately, when they lose interest in it, or if something happens to them, it'll be lost to the hobby. But, you know, that's their hobby, is building control systems.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. You know, I never thought about that for so many years, having worked in networking and worked with protocols and worked in companies. Somehow to me, the concept of a hobby of writing a protocol just never seemed hobbyish.
Oh, there's bunches of them out there. Seriously, I mean, and now you've got MQTT, which is, you know, pretty much most of what LCC does, but much lighter weight. There's people out there doing that. You know, there's gazillions of options out there. There's at least 2 commercial things that are essentially CMRI, but, you know, they didn't like this or they didn't like that. I had one guy on the Combach list, you know, essentially using their electronics forum as a blog for about a year, trying to rebuild CP Node, you know, all the work Chuck Catania, my partner, did that we offer as CP Node. And what it came down to was a different option on the protocol bus. And, you know, everybody was saying, well, you ought to talk to Seth because he's still got all this stuff and the code's all published. And, you know, I finally answered one of his questions. He said, oh, I was wondering when you were going to come here. And, you know, my question was, well, why did you do the Q option as opposed to the Z option? And it was, oh, I just thought it was different, so I would do it. And so he just wanted to go through the journey of reinventing CP Node, you know, of rewriting code to handle Chubb's protocol. There's only 4 or 5 very good, well-documented pieces of code available for free on JMRI or Arduino that do that. He just wanted to do it.
Oh, well. Yeah, it's well, kind of, I guess it's kind of depends on what your goal is.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I thought it was very interesting. Just an interesting. We often talk about people that kind of start on something else and ends up being a second hobby, whether it's 3D printing or whatever. I think it's clear that kind of electronic systems design can become that as well. So, just aside. Anybody else got anything interesting that's happening or want to discuss?
Well, I've got a question, another one, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I've got an Athearn Blue Box SW1500, which I want to stick a decoder and sound into it. And I'm trying to figure out, being new to trying to do this kind of stuff, what kind of speakers should I put inside that model? Should I put in round speaker, oval speaker, sugar cube speakers? Anybody have any recommendations on what would be best to be in there?
I would suggest probably a sugar cube. It's a pretty small thing. There's that, what is that, Model Sound Systems, or the guy who builds those little chambers with them, that might be a really good speaker to get good sound out of it. Let me see if I can find him.
Yeah, I'm trying to get, you know, the sound quality, you know, is what's most important to me. So.
Phil, was that guy's name Burke, JT Burke or something? The guy who was the sound engineer and he made
Yeah, I was trying
20
to
or
find.
30
Yeah.
20 or 30 different speakers that are specifically for specific diesels. And if you have that diesel, you have to put a speaker in. It's just crazy how much better it is with that. These are acoustically engineered to Hollywood standards. Each of these little boxes that fit only in certain models.
Wow.
Could you post a link for that?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. Yeah, one of our guys in the O-scale side in Pleasanton bought some. They're pretty amazing.
I mean, he treats the little tiny enclosure in whatever it is, the Proto 2000, as like an acoustic chamber with second and third harmonics, and
Cool.
he has a YouTube channel that he posts side by side audio play of the diesels with the. It doesn't matter which decoder you use.
What's his name?
Well, that's the part we're trying to figure out.
Oh, okay.
That's what Phil's. We all have heard it. It's not top of mind. There's too much stuff. He's been on What's Neat this week. And like I said, he has a YouTube channel too of his, which I'm subscribed to. Maybe if I look at my 300 subscription YouTube channel, I'll be able to find it in 10 minutes.
Here I am just going back over the same argument of the correct color of Southern Pacific freight car red. As, Seth, I just want to thank you, by the way, for that. What was it? The recommendation for that little spray airbrush.
Well,
That with the canister. It's turned out to be actually got me back into doing some airbrushing again.
how cool is that?
Well, it was, thing. I'm limited to acrylics. I can't handle the other paints, the old paints that we used to use anymore. So it's made a handy little acrylic airbrush, and the other day I was having a problem with it, with the airbrush part, and I dug out another old cheap airbrush and actually was able to swap it onto that canister, and it worked.
Okay.
Well, Phil, I found it.
Yeah, I did also. Here, so this is the company.
It's the guy I said at the start, JT Burke.
Ah, okay.
It just happened to pop in my mind.
So this is basically what he does is he takes the speakers and he designs a sound module for them. And so like if you go in here and you he has specific speakers for all of these different engines. And so like what were you looking for? A Genesis? So I don't know if there's a 1500 here. Here's a Athearn 1500. So Larry, I don't know if that was what you were looking for, but basically, this speaker sits right here, and see it's a Sugar Cube speaker in a ported enclosure, which is what gives it really good sound. And so it's designed to go right here right here in the engine, I guess, on this end. This is stock, and here it is with the speaker installed. So I'll put the link to that in the chat.
I'll put the link to his YouTube channel in the chat.
Cool.
Then you can hear all the speakers.
Yeah, they do sound really good. So, but here's the, but yeah, he has a whole bunch of different speakers, and for the O scalers, he's got kind of some standard box speakers, and they sound really good. They give you really good, very good kind of well-structured sound. So.
So I've got a structure here. I need to log in from the other computer to do this. Give me a minute and I'll show you some
Cool
photos of where we're going with it. Let's see here. And let's see if I can share. Oops. There we are. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And where is it? Here we are.
Actually, very high quality feedback.
Very high quality, very high quality. So here, I'll just do this, but what you can see is the building is laser cut. It was drawn in Inkscape, and it's got Tichy doors and windows, and the trusses are also all laser cut. So it's now been assembled with the walls to the base, and there's more to this. I'll have more on a future call. And at this point, the roof trusses have just been dropped into the laser cut tabs. And what I need to do is print a little bit of an interior. This is the warehouse and tasting room of a winery. The former Villa Armando that used to be in Pleasanton. So we imagine if it lasted a few more years, they'd have had a tasting room. And you can see that bulkhead about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trusses from the right. And we'll essentially use a photo backdrop inside the building and then have some just shapes representing crates and a tasting bar. And that will be part of the Villa Armando complex in Pleasanton on my layout. So this has been working since before the pandemic, but I have actually got around to assembling it. So should be a fun little structure, not too fancy. The roof will probably be removable. You can see there's a little slot along the top of the roof trusses for essentially a ridge pole, and you'll be able to lift that out, and it'll be lit. And as I say, the part on the right will have an interior. The part on the back really isn't visible from anywhere on the layout.
Seth, is there some sort of primer on how to design for laser cutting?
I'm not sure there is, but I've been experimenting with this. The original so I'll write it up, I guess, is the bottom line. The original project was to do something with an AMB type 22 depot and make it work for the restored depot in Pleasanton. And actually, Dave Parks, who I think is still on the call, did a kit bash of kind of half laser kit and half styrene, And it was just a lot of work for him, but he did a super job on it. And it just turned out that when we got it full size, it didn't really fit the space. So we basically started to do it over again, this time with a left-handed depot, since we knew it wasn't going to be quite accurate. And the left-handed depot, if you remember, they made the 22 in both hands, worked a little better. Well, of course, you know, the kit that we bought off eBay was missing a few parts. So we kept buying parts at essentially $10 a piece, and that got out of hand. And then we realized, well, gee, it had been modified. We couldn't extend it as far as David had done originally, because that was where we got in the no room problem. So we ended up essentially laser bashing. So we backed into this because we needed to make laser parts that would, is that me? No, I think somebody else must have got on.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah, you know, trying to get the tabs and slots and everything to fit. So what we were trying to really do was kit bash a laser kit, and you know, that project is also coming along, and I'll have more on that. But yeah, Ken, that's a really good point, and I will write something up. I mean, it might just be a one-page PDF, but the neat thing is it's pretty cheap. Inkscape is free. It works pretty much like any other vector drawing program. They have more of a CAD feel than something like Photoshop. And you have really good control on this stuff. And there are laser cutting services. We used a friend of Rick Brennan's who had this thing, but there are commercial services, so it really should be pretty accessible.
Well, I've got about 5 buildings that I've got in mock-up right now with just artist board.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to start turning them into the final vision of the Port Costa station buildings. And I was just looking at something that might be different, rather than trying to cut evergreen siding and so forth, and do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I mean, a Cricut or Silhouette die cutter, if you can work with material that thin. I mean, there's a little problem I've had with them with rigidity. So, you know, using, this is just Northwest Shortline basswood and inexpensive craft store plywood, and that just turned out to be fine. Turns out the fancy airplane plywood has so much resin it's hard to cut, and there was a lot more laser cutting time. So, you know, this was definitely a situation where, other than the scribe siding, you know, cheap and available was actually better.
Okay, I just, you know.
Yeah, so we'll write it up and we'll keep everybody, you know, apprised of the journey. I was surprised once I got past my, you know, just trepidation of trying something new, how easy it really was. So I'll release the share here.
Yeah, it'd be good. It might be good to go through, think about that as a clinic at some point, kind of how to go through that process. Because I know we've kind of done it with Cricut. You know, that one of the questions, an interesting question is what laser cutting resources are available within the area. You know, if you have something, is there somewhere you can take it to and get it cut? And that would be interesting to know, because it kind of.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of these things, unfortunately, come down to the critical step is, I know a guy. You know?
Right, exactly. It's just not, I don't know there's any commercial availability of, you know, a laser printer or a laser cutter you can rent by the hour.
There's a couple of services I am told that are a little like Shapeways. You know, you specify the material and you send them the diagram, and you know, happily preparing the drawing turned out to be surprisingly easy. So yeah, and we'll try and do that, and I think it'll be, you know, because this is just another great tool in the you know, quiver, if you will, of 3D printing and CNC machining. And the circuit boards and all this stuff. It's really not that hard to do and not that expensive, and just for most of us gives a better result than laboriously cutting by hand.
Hey, I just want to point out one thing. This past week, I got my new hearing aid, and for the first time, I've actually enjoyed this conversation.
Cool.
Oh no, it's the wrong way. But it's an in-the-ear hearing aid rather than over-the-ear, so I can now wear a mask and talk, hear people at the same time.
Are you using Eargo?
Am I using what?
Eargo, EARGO.
No, it's just something from Costco that I got.
Ah,
Hey, I'm cheap.
no. The Eargos are not, anyway.
Yeah, but it actually, as I say, for even with the headset on it, it's working beautifully. So
Yeah, we're the first generation that is suffering from its misspent youth.
yeah. My brother was a rock man in rock, still is actually, at 69. And we've, going to all those gigs. Oh, Jesus, my hearing went.
Yep.
His is surprisingly good still. And he was playing in them.
I used to do sound, be one of the sound guys, and my hearing's never recovered.
Now he was for 25 years. He was the trumpet player for Tower Power. So
most of those guys, even way back then, started using hearing protection very early. They started wearing, the in-ear monitors or something while they were playing.
What's
I don't
going
know.
to
It'd
be
be
the
interesting
material?
to ask him when they started doing that, because I know they do today. I mean, almost none of those, they don't get on stage without those, the things that go in your ear and they're molded to your ear, and they do about 30 or 40 dB of noise dropping, and they just play back what's being played back to the audience, but at a different level.
I don't recall that being used, but
Yeah. I know that's what they do today. So
yeah,
it's.
as I say, he started at 18 in Tower,
Yeah.
and
What's going to be the material of choice for building in the future? Where are we going with this? Well, I used to, when I started out building structures 70 years ago using the Strathmore board, and that material, eventually would distort and so forth. Well, it turns out, of course, that styrene does too. Styrene looks great when you put it together, but because of all the solvents you use in the glue, I guess, it's almost anything I've made out of styrene is beginning to have curved sides and distorted and so forth. So then I kind of shifted I noticed that some of the things that had acrylic backing this wasn't happening to, but acrylic was very difficult to work with by hand. It's almost impossible to carve it by hand. And so I thought, well, maybe acrylic for the framing or a first layer, and then a second layer of styrene that has the detail on it would be the way to go. And that's actually, I've been building a building for Seth for years, Milpitas Station, that way. I haven't worked on it in a while. But anyway, the problem is that from a hand standpoint, that takes an awful lot of work to do that. But then when I look at these things of, additive printing and so forth, some combination of that and going back to, the problem with laser cutting was that nobody had a machine and they were so expensive that, unless you're going to, we're willing to get into the business as a way of laying off the cost of that machine, and we're going to go into laser cutting of wood, you could use other materials than wood, but that was going to cost you even more. Anyway, I just wonder where is this thing going? 5 years from now, 6, 7 years from now, will it all be additive printing? Will we be going back to laser cutting because the machines are a lot cheaper? What's the direction?
I don't know. I'm still using styrene for most of my stuff. I just grabbed this one off the layout.
Unfortunately, a few years later, the stuff begins to, almost everything I have that we built with, that was hand built with styrene is, has curves and so forth in it now.
Yeah, it's, a little bit like going back to the paper stuff where you really had to brace it with wood. Dave, I think the answer is probably all of the above. Some of these laser cuttable materials, certainly you can cut certain styrenes. You have to look at the MSDS with lasers. Laser board, the thin plywood, needs some interior bracing. I've used circuit boards for interior floors and ceilings, which really helps with lighting. And people are doing etch. So it's sort of a combination of the material that will give you the compromise between strength and detail for the particular thing, and little engineering on bracing, because I think you're right. Most things that we use are thin enough that the strength doesn't really scale, and we do have those problems. And you point out interactions between the solvents and just the general outgassing of the plastics over time. I've had pretty good luck with those acrylic core buildings we did at NUMMI. Although, I have seen a little distortion here and there on the styrene siding, that we glued to it. So, maybe some more thought about adhesives will help.
How did you glue it on, Seth? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, we tried a little of everything. Scotch spray on adhesive. That seems to be, 10 years on, causing a little bit of distortion on the styrene. The evergreen that's representing metal siding is a little distorted here and there. Killer red works really well. You get that up around the edges and just little patches of it here or there to keep the stuff from bowing out. The acrylic cores seem to have done well. And Providenza kind of did the same technique for his strong buildings on his outdoor, FN,
right,
proto-FN stuff. And he's had good results over not quite as long. So, I think, David was onto this fairly early. I don't think it was even my idea. I think it was David's, of using the acrylic core and then cladding it with something.
Because I did one building that way, but I did epoxy, a thin layer of epoxy, marking where you didn't want it, and then you put wood on and glued it on. It's going to be interesting to see how it holds up through the years. That's, I think epoxy is kind of, in a lot of cases, almost the best for some of this stuff, because it stays inert for a long time, from what I can tell.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't do much once it sets up. And if you glue it to something like wood, that isn't going to be attacked by chemicals very much anyway.
This laser cutting thing you have, Seth, is that yours, or is it?
No, it's one of the Yosemite Shortline guys who's got a machine shop and uses this thing commercially. So Rick has access to it. Like I say, it boils down to, I know a guy, but there are commercial services.
Well, I thought I thought maybe you had it, and I thought I just wondered if this would cut acrylic.
It can, and there are a number of people. I have a guy who unfortunately is in Melbourne, Australia, who does acrylic cutting, and my servo mounts that I sell on the site are laser cut acrylic. And, you know, it's not unreasonable. I mean, they're actually fairly competitive, even having to ship them from Oz. So, you know, it can be done.
I know I've got longevity questions too about laser cut wood structures. And I've got a couple kits, like a Banta's Type 18 station sitting there waiting to be built, and a Banta Port Costa engine house. And I'm wondering, are they going to be around? And well, I won't be around in 20 years, maybe, so it doesn't matter. But
Is that like I don't have to run faster than the bear? I just
yeah,
have
I
to.
know. Hey, I'm not that young anymore.
Well, you know, that's a good question. I mean, I also have that kit because, you know, Type 18's Mountain View. No place on my layout, but I just thought it was cool to have. So the question is, you know, well, how long do I have to build it while the self-stick stuff is still self-sticking? And then what adhesives do I use when I've got this sort of dead self-stick all over the gluing faces?
Yeah.
I don't know either. That's a good question.
No, I think coming back to, you know, David's original question, I think the thing that's interesting is people who are building kits today, you know, who are doing things have a really much wider range of choices, right? So you can choose laser cutting for siding. You could use, you know, for example, you can use filament printing for basic shapes, for bracing, for all sorts of stuff, and then you can use resin printing for details. And
Yeah.
I think there's a real opportunity for people in the craftsman market to think about this as a set of components or processes you have available to you to generate the pieces for a kit and generate some much more interesting, not high volume kits, because things you only were able to do in the past if you were willing to pay for some sort of tooling, right? Whether it was die casting or injection molding or whatever. Now you can do those with the resin printing, you know, and you combine that with filament printing for, you know, doing the structural pieces because it's very strong. It's kind of interesting. Resin is high resolution but more brittle. Filament is lower resolution but very strong. So you kind of mix those when you think about, and then add sheet stock of either wood or styrene. I mean, it's really interesting to think about the plethora of modeling processes and pieces you can now apply to building a model. Most of them aren't available to all of us because, you know, most of us don't have a laser cutter, and a resin printer and a filament printer and all the skill sets to use those. But you think about it from a modeling shop, from someone who wanted to be a manufacturer, could be a pretty interesting way to make some pretty outstanding kits.
You know, I'm almost thinking about a modeling club where these tools and so forth are sort of held by the club as a service to its members.
Well, there
So
are
that
some
we can,
maker things in the Bay Area. One of the things we should do is probably someone should, maybe I'll try to see if I can find some of those, because those are kind of what the maker fairs or maker, you know, they're kind of these maker organizations where they've got a place and they've got some tools and people can bring things, and, you know, makers can come bring their stuff and print it, and maybe we can figure out how to get access to, you know, if we had one of those that was reasonably centralized, maybe we can arrange to get access as a division or something.
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah. Because I'm not, you know, I don't want to invest in a lot of in printers and stuff like that because I know they're going to be obsolete in 2 years.
right, and you don't create enough volume. You just don't run enough volume for it.
Yeah.
The other thing we should do is just so, you know, I have a filament printer, and I'm more than willing, if someone has something they want to try printing it, you know, give me a call and I'll send me a file. I'll try printing it. Not a big deal. It's, you know, what's interesting, once you buy one of these, like a 3D printer, the cost of printing is the materials, and it's $20 for a kilogram. And let me tell you, you build a lot of models with a kilogram of filament, and then there's a couple of disposable parts, but other than that, it really doesn't cost much to print something. So,
Well, I'll have to take you up on that because
yeah,
I've got an
absolutely.
STL file for all of the windows for a Type 18 station,
Yeah, the
rather
problem,
than y-
but the
rather than
problem,
using the laser cut ones.
the problem with the filament printer is that it's 0.40 resolution, 0.040
Yeah.
resolution. Yeah, so it's kind of like for window frames, you kind of almost have to, unless you're in G scale, I think you probably have to do them in resin.
Yeah, that's what I need to find is a resin printer
Fran,
for these.
just tell you next time,
There's
Fran.
there's several guys around who have them. And I mean, Kermit, the late Kermit Paul, of course, was a guy who always had the latest stuff. And, if you made half an effort to get the materials prepared, he would be happy to mill it, laser cut it, 3D print it, with the technology at the time. But there are other folks around, most people who have these machines aren't using them anything like full time. Most of the people I know have resin printers, are really more worried about the resin going bad before they use it up. So, if you
So
go
Joe,
over there with an STL file and a contribution to the resin, you may have a best friend for life. So that's probably something we could do is set up
Yeah,
I've got
that
this cool tool and I'm happy to cooperate.
there's a Facebook 3D printing for model railroads
yep.
that I just happen to occasionally find somebody who's offering an STL that looks
Yeah.
interesting, and I get hold of it and sit on it.
It goes both ways. Go
So
on one
yeah,
of those forums and say, who's got the machine who can do this? Are you willing to do it for me?
Yeah.
well, there are two people. Fran has a resin printer, and Jonathan Sauer has a
Yeah.
resin printer. So
Right.
we have a couple of folks that have them, and like I said, it's not really potentially something just set up and go print something. I know
Yeah.
Fran tried printing something for me on the resin printer. Actually, turned out it didn't want to print very well, but sometimes it's a challenge.
I've got to get hold of Fran anyway because I understand he also is the knowledgeable person for fixing your ISO soldering gun, and he he gave us the URL for the batteries, and I've got the batteries now. I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing in fixing them.
Yeah, actually, Seth put something in the chat about that Interaction Hobbies, which is a Canadian manufacturer, and they actually are doing some pretty amazing kits with multiple different types of parts in them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
in England, there's this guy who does uh, printed figures called Model U
Oh yeah.
that
Yep.
does incredible stuff. His Ragged Victorian series, oh my God. I mean, these are 1850s characters. He gets people to pose for him, and he's got a scanning thing and some sort of mesh software that he takes the scan and comes up with incredible reproductions in as small as N scale.
Well, you can actually buy those 3D scanners. They make them kind of like desktop size for smaller objects, and basically it's a turntable, and it's got a camera scanner mechanism, and it spins the thing around and reads it, and then creates basically an output file that you can use to model.
He gets people in costume. He
They have a
scans
bigger
people.
they have bigger ones too. They just cost a lot more money. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
but they have both
No.
small ones and big ones now. It's kind of cool. It's
Yeah, but it's
again,
just
that's the kind of thing that see, what we need to do is we need to figure out a way. There needs to be somebody who's got a traveling digitization business. So they
yeah.
set up to come to our Coast Division meets, and they set up the digitizer, and for $10 they'll digitize you and give you a digital file of yourself.
He does that, but the thing is, the problem was he was going to start a U.S. branch, in 2019. And guess what? Our friendly pandemic
You
is
can't
just,
get there. Can't get there from here. I know. I
yeah,
know all the Canadians that there was a long conversation about the National Narrow Gauge Convention, and all the Canadians said you just can't go. You can't because you can't come home. And if you do come home, you're probably going to have a 14-day quarantine.
yeah.
So, yeah.
It's
The Canadians at least just opened the border. All you need is vaccination and
yeah,
a
but
72-hour
we're
test.
coming back from Canada now.
Now,
We still haven't opened our border.
oh well.
You can do it for business, but you can't do it for personal or
So,
for
so the
anything
interesting
else.
thing, I read an article that all these Brits that are in Europe are all making extra reservations for flights on like the 27th and the 28th because they're all scared to death that they're going to get trapped on the continent if it goes red and they have to do a 14-day quarantine when they return to the UK. And so there's like this, they're going to make the announcement. There's like 2 or 3 days after they make the announcement that Europe went red before it happens. And they're all trying to book flights as backup flights during those days so they can come home before the walls close up. It's pretty challenging to think about planning a vacation when you've got to do that concept of not knowing whether you'll get home or not. Um,
I I know I would have been in Europe this year, but
yep.
guess what? My cruise down the Danube is not happening.
Yeah. Oh well.
Oh, yeah, it's just life, or what was life. Um,
It's gonna get back to normal.
all right, we're getting off model railroading.
That's true. I hate to say
Um,
it.
Hey,
I,
wait, Phil,
yes, sir.
if you guys want to see a really nice modeling shop, go up to Fort Bragg and look at the club up there. Their shop's like 10, 15 feet wide and about 45 feet long.
This is the outdoor shop there at the
Yeah.
by the yeah.
Right there at the skunk train.
Yeah.
And they've got just about everything you could dream about.
I think I'm going back to 1-to-1 scale. Uh, my PLA Niles Canyon friends have 1744 under rebuild. Now they're getting the lens and roundhouse. So
Cool.
it's no longer model railroading.
Did they ever get down into downtown Pleasanton or anything happen with that?
They got so it turned, and my understanding is that the businesses, Pleasanton, the railroad runs along basically what's called First Street, which becomes Stanley, and it goes across Bernal and then kind of goes into downtown through that area there. And there's what used to be the rail line is now a parking lot, has become a parking lot. Apparently the businesses on the east side of Bernal, they're in downtown, all just raised an uproar about the railroad coming through there. And I think a lot of it was related to parking and other stuff. So my understanding is that they're going to terminate on the other side. They have some land there on the other side of Bernal, the corner of Bernal and First Street, and they're gonna basically terminate there. That was my understanding, but that's very anybody who
As
knows.
a member, that's my understanding too.
Yeah.
They can't do anything. The only problem is now that they're getting some steam back, they need to have either a turntable and they don't have land for it. But they're up to Verona, and they're going through Happy Valley right now on laying track, and when I took the July 4th ride up, we went up to Verona, and it was quite something. And then they come up with this agreement with the Santa Clara people, so they're taking the Lenzen Roundhouse and going to rebuild it in Niles, as well as the Pacific 2479, I think it is going to come under their auspices.
Wow.
And they're revitalizing that Y that they have in Niles for turning. But they're also getting the turntable from Lenzen. Oh wow!
I've never been there. I got to get there one day.
It's a great little ride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you want to go, let me know, and I'll.
And that was something that was kind of the second field trip we talked about doing as a division. And so if there's interest, that would be, the idea would be to set up something to go there, do some shop tours, maybe do a train ride, and then maybe in the afternoon after that have a barbecue, and then maybe have a couple of layouts open in that area, that are the Niles layout, maybe the Pleasanton layout, maybe a couple of others. So they're out in this area here.
That'd make a great day.
Yeah, it would. And
you do a good tour.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing that would be great to do, the convention team did a thank you at Ardenwood, and that was also would be a great, kind of a ride on the train over, a tour around the shops, discussions, and that again might be a great thing to do in the morning. Maybe to add something to it, then again have some sort of a barbecue or something, a lunch, and then have some layout tours in the afternoon, because there are a number of layouts there in the Fremont area we go see. So those are great things to, I think they're kind of really cool things we can do that don't have a clinic but have something exciting to do in the morning, and try to do one of those at least every other year.
Yeah.
Is kind of the thought.
Absolutely. I mean, there's Ardenwood. There's the Western Railroad Group up in Rio Vista. There's actually some really good prototype tile resources here in the Bay Area.
And for all those groups, having us come visit is actually a really good thing, because we are all volunteer targets.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually serious. I mean, if we bring NMRA members to a group like that, there is at least some reasonable potential that those could be folks that get excited while they're in volunteer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a mutual thing. It's great for us to go see what they're doing, but it's also great for them to show us to potentially intrigue folks for support. That's good. I like that. That's
Yeah.
I think I think we've got members who are members of all those organizations, so we just pick them up and pick a date. And we actually, if you remember the calendar we put up, there's actually one of those on the calendar, another field trip. And that was kind of the idea, was to do Niles. So I think it's probably next year. I think it was next year.
Well, hopefully we'll get rid of COVID.
We got to get rid of COVID.
Yeah.
It's running through. It's great. Let's get rid of it. So.
Yeah.
Gotta get our third jab, so.
You got your third shots coming up, yeah. I liked it so much, I want another one.
Well, the thing that amazed me was that nobody ever commented on the fact that all those vaccine cards had extra spaces at the bottom. It had the first two vaccines, and it had spaces for extra vaccines. Why was anybody in any way surprised that there were extra shots? These guys, when they made the forms up, which they made the forms up back in 2020, probably in the summer. So this was, a year ago, they made the forms up. They said, well, there's a pretty high probability they're going to use, but notice there are actually two spaces on there. So if you think number 3 is the end,
there's another one after that.
Somebody thought that.
Yeah, no, I noticed that when I got the card, there was room for extra shots. And I thought, well, that's not a good sign.
Well, the other thing too is I don't know if any of you've done this, but get your state uh, jab thing.
Oh, yeah. I tried that. It keeps rejecting me, even though I keep giving it the right
It
information.
took me 3 tries, but I finally they found the record
Oh, okay. I'll
and
try it.
matched it and sent me the thing, and it's yeah, it's not one of the best
No, it's not.
matching things. But the problem is if particularly if you had a private physician or your do your inoculation, they have some trouble getting the records synced up. But if
Mhm.
you had like Kaiser or like I did, I actually went to Contra Costa Public Health and had them do it. It seems that they were able to finally match the records to the state.
Yeah, I know with Kaiser, they actually sent me a thing saying, if you got it, fill out this questionnaire, which I did and sent it back to them, and it now shows on my record.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I did. I have Kaiser too, but yeah, they weren't ready to get gift jabs back in February.
Oh, yeah, no, no. They weren't ready to give jabs in June.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I had to get mine in 2 different places too.
they were too busy doing it at the rest homes. Couldn't
Yeah.
handle their own customers.
No.
Chuck Hackarainen here, and I have a dumb question to ask of the experts here on the panel. I'm running on my little layouts, which are 4x8 and 2x8. I run DCC with NCE power cabs, just one cab, no power districts, no boosters, none of that. The question comes, how big of a layout in terms of total length of track could I run an NCE power cab on if I had multiple wire connections made from the power cab to various locations on that layout, just to make sure that there's more places for power. On my current layouts, I have 2 connections set up so that roughly half of the track has power from one set of wires and presumably the other half from the other set. And I don't notice any major differences in how they run on that. But how big of a layout can you do that on with just one power cab without boosters?
So I think there are 2 limitations, and Seth, other folks correct me. One limitation is the amount of power the layout's going to draw, and the size there's kind of less important, quite frankly, than the number of engines and other things that are drawing power on the layout. So if you got a small layout and you're running one engine, your draw is the current of one engine, which is, like maximum an amp kind of thing, and in half an amp to an amp in HO and DCC. The problem is if you've got a bigger layout and you've got 6 engines on the layout and they're all idling or 3 of them are running, then you have 3 times the power. So a lot of the basic DCC are really designed to run only a couple of engines at a time. So they have maybe 2.5 amps. Like I think the Sprague has 2.5 amps to power. So you kind of run that in your head. Figure every engine's about 3/4 of an amp. So 2.5 amps, you really are 2 engines. Getting the third one's kind of a challenge, but maybe it'll do 3. If you
Yeah.
start doing a lot of accessories, like if you're doing DCC through your turnout, then that takes power. So there's the first thing's a power consideration. The second one, quite frankly, I think is religion. Um, there are distance issues with DCC wires, and they're related to how well the wire is structured. Is it twisted? So, in other words, the problem
Right.
with these wires is they have an AC signal on them that's a frequency signal. If you move the wires apart, you get induction between them. So what they tell you is put them close together, put at least 3 turns per foot in the wires when you feed them and that kind of stuff. And so the question is, how far can you go? So some people will
Well,
say 30 feet, some people will say 40 feet, but it's that kind
yeah,
of number.
yeah. Linear. If you have a bus, twisted wire bus, you can probably go about 40 feet.
Yep.
But my suggestion is very seriously consider going up one step in NCE to an SB5.
Okay. Well, I actually do. When I run it on my home layout, I've had as many as 4 locomotives running at a time because there's an amp meter that shows up on the screen of the power cab if you go to the right place, and I can see exactly how much I draw. And they're all drawing like a quarter of an amp at most, any
Yeah.
individual locomotive. So I can run 4 Alco F units, FA, FB combinations around the layout together, and don't seem to show any signs of overshooting it. And in the case I'm looking at here, it's a big layout, but probably would run no more than 2 trains at a time on the layout. And the switching from analog DC on this layout to DCC, only when I'm there and operating it, is strictly so that I can run my locomotives with sound so that the public gets some nice bells and whistles to enjoy, rather than just watching analog DC trains go round and round in a circle.
Well, if you've tested it and it's working for you, then it works, kind of end of story. If we were to, put our consultant's hat on and give you a bulletproof design, we'd weasel a little more. But I think the 30 to 50 feet in any one direction, try to avoid a lot of taps, is probably good news, good advice. You can probably get away with 14. Most of us use 12, mostly because 12 is what there is in the big box store. So you don't really pay any more for it. One thing to be concerned about with multiple locomotives is that sound locomotives tend to draw a lot more than their steady state full current power when they first turn on. So you can manage that with a PSX type circuit breaker, which was really designed to solve that problem. But understand the minimum it'll trip at's about 3.3 amps, and your sprogs and power cabs are only good for about 2. So somebody, maybe Ken was saying, if you're really going to do that, go step up to an SB5. That's actually pretty good advice, because then breakers and stuff will work.
And there's another consideration when you go to a big layout. So by the way, just one comment. So the layout at Pleasanton, they basically took a DC layout that's almost 110 feet long and had a bunch of blocks wired that whole link separately. And they literally at the core just made a switch from DC to DCC. So they put DC, and the thing has bus wires that are 5 inches apart everywhere. And the noise levels are horrendous.
Okay.
But it generally all works. I mean, it's really interesting. So it's bad, and there occasionally are issues, but it still works. So I don't think that's, I don't think it's going to be a huge issue with distance in that. The other thing though is the bigger the layout, the other thing to think about is doing circuit breakers. And because circuit breakers allow you to isolate. So if you've got coming out from the center 4 wires going to the parts of the layout, instead of just bringing them together and wiring them together, buy a circuit breaker for each one of those. Buy a 4-pack of the DCC specialty circuit breakers. And that way, when you have a short, it pops the circuit breaker, and actually those circuit breakers can alarm, and you'll actually know which part of the layout the short is on. And so that's actually another kind of thing to add in. Another thing that's kind of interesting to think about, we've been looking at that, is to look at this stuff. This is 12 gauge zip cord for stereo systems, and this is 100 feet. You can get more. The cool thing about this is because it's zip cord, the wires are actually bonded together, which gives you that perfect, when you twist the reason you twist pairs is to try to hold the wires together. The fact is these are just molded together, and if you want to put a break in, you can actually just cut them and put them in. We're looking at these and using those lever connectors. I don't know if you've seen those lever connectors where you just plug the wire in and push a lever down, and they're about 50 cents. And just you eliminate all the soldering, and it's all easy. Plus, you can disconnect it if you want to. So this is really pretty interesting wire for those feeder wires.
Yeah, I gotta say those connectors have made me a convert.
The clamp connectors.
The tab clamp. Yeah.
There are some of them that actually have they're two into two. So they're 2 into 4, but they're actually 1 into 2, and they're in a single thing. And for putting feeder drops in, they're perfect because you can have both wires go through, and the 2 feeder drops come out. And the ones I found, they got 2 little screw holes, so you can actually screw them up the bottom of the layout and have them, so the feeders just run right along.
Not that I love wiring, but it's made it tolerable.
Right. Did you buy one of those the strippers that you just put the wire in and push the button and it strips it to just the right length?
No.
I actually think that's probably worth it as a tool. They sell a stripper where you put the wire and you just go boom, and it just cuts it to exactly the right length to fit into those and have no exposed
I'm still
wire.
using a stripper.
Right. New wiring techniques.
But I only have four sections on my little 15 foot layout. So
well, I hate to say this. I need to run. My wife's trying to grab me. She wanted to run out and look at something. So does anyone else want to take over, or is everybody about ready to call it?
Well, I think we're about ready to call it. I did going to get a chance to visit the Silicon Valley lines for the first time in person this afternoon. I've been a remote operator on the railroad for several months, and they did vote me in as a official member a couple of weeks ago. So I can go by, and I'm going to take a couple of my Bachmann B&O E7s down with my passenger train, and we're going to run a B&O director's special from one end of the railroad to the other this afternoon, just to see how it looks in real life there.
Cool.
I did that pre-COVID for 3 days in a row at La Mesa with that train, and it ran perfectly. And it was right out of the box. Never been run, never been speed matched, and they did fine for 18 hours over 3 days. So I think that they'll do fine on Silicon Valley line.
Yeah, I've been using the NECs since about 2002. They're pretty good. In fact, I haven't even gone up to an SB5. I'm still using an SB3A. So.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the recommendations.
So long.
Thanks all. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Bye now.
Okay.